The real you is beyond birth and death. There's a Zen Koan that says this. It says, show me your original face, the face you had before your parents were born. Now, the face you had before your parents were born is the real you. And so there's the you that you can observe, that you can watch, that you can talk about. But then there's the you that's behind that you. So there's the real you, there's the you, but then there's the you behind the you. And the you behind the you is the subject of everything you're experiencing. Now here's the thing. If the real you is the subject, it's what's looking, it's what's watching, it's what's observing, it's what's aware of everything that you can experience, then we have to ask ourselves the question, is this awareness, is this observer, is this witness witnessing the body? Is it witnessing the mind? Is it witnessing our thoughts and feelings and emotions and all these things that we're experiencing? And the answer is yes. The answer is we can observe, we can witness the body-mind. And so if we can witness the body-mind as the subject, then what does that mean? That means that if we're observing something as the subject, then we are not that. That would make that thing the object. The subject cannot be the object. The subject is what is observing the object, but it is not the object. And so if you can observe your body, if you can observe your mind, your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, all these different things that we're constantly identifying with, then what does this actually mean? What does this actually mean? Well, it means that we are not all these things. And so the way we discover who we really are is by first discovering who we are not. And this is the practice, this is the meditation of nete nete. Nete nete is a Sanskrit expression that just means not this, not that. And so we start with the mind, we start with our thoughts, and we start with maybe feelings and emotions, and we ask ourselves in this process of self-discovery while we're meditating, we ask ourselves, can we observe, can we witness, can we watch our thoughts and our feelings and our emotions? And the answer is yes. As the subject, we can observe them, we can talk about them, we can write them down. We are witnessing them. And if we're witnessing them, we are the witness, we are what is looking, therefore we cannot be the object that we're observing. And the thoughts, the feelings, the emotions, the sensations, those are all objects that can be observed. And then we go to the body. Of course, we can observe the body. We are aware of the body. And so again, if we're aware of it, what does this mean? That means that we are not it. We can't be it. And so we have a body, but we are not the body. We have a mind, but we are not the mind. We have thoughts, but we are not our thoughts. We have feelings, but we are not our feelings. We have emotions, but we are not our emotions. We are what's aware. And so you start this process, and then you get to a point where you realize, self-realization, that the essence of who you really are is awareness, or consciousness, if you want to call it that, or being. But you start to recognize, you start to realize that who you really are, as the one that's observing, as the one that's witnessing, is kind of tricky because you can't really pinpoint it, you can't really locate it. It's almost as if it's beyond time and beyond space. And this is something that, when people start talking about enlightenment, they think that enlightenment is some kind of spiritual achievement, some kind of spiritual status that's attained. But enlightenment actually is simply the recognition of our true nature, the recognition of our being. And so in a way, enlightenment is not something to be attained, but it's actually the essence of our true nature. And so that's why in spirituality, we're talking about awakening all the time. What are we awakening to? What does waking up mean? Well, it's waking up to who you really are. And so enlightenment, like I said, is not a spiritual achievement. It's a realization. It's because it's who we are. And the way we discover who we really are is by first discovering who we are not, nete nete. And so we go through this process of nete nete. And we're letting go of who we think we are. We're realizing we are not this, we are not that. But then what are we left with? Well, we're left with this emptiness. We're left with this space. We're left with this awareness. And it can feel very lonely. It can feel dry. It can feel cold. It can feel like we're detached from everything around us. But the thing about the process of self-discovery, of waking up to who you really are, is that the process of nete nete is just the beginning. It's the prologue to the story of who you really are. And so once we move past this phase, which is just the early beginning phase, then all of a sudden we go from being nothing, no thing, to realizing that we are everything. Everything and nothing merged together. Because what we find in this process of self-discovery through meditation is that everything that we can observe as this mysterious subject, everything that can be witnessed, everything that can be looked at in our 3D world, whether it's the matter or the forces, whatever it is that's arising from the universe, whatever can be observed, all of it is arising from this infinite sea of awareness, of emptiness. It's all coming from that. And so we know that if we really examine matter, what we find is that matter is not as solid and separate as we think. And this is what quantum physics is showing us. That if we examine these different elements in the universe, matter, the forces, eventually what we get to is this place of pure energy. And this energy is infinite, and this energy cannot be created or destroyed. And everything's arising from this infinite sea of energy, this infinite sea of emptiness, of empty space. And I believe that this infinite sea of energy, this infinite sea of empty space is pure consciousness. It's pure awareness, because I don't think that consciousness is coming from matter. I don't think consciousness is a product of the material world. I think matter and all the forces of the universe arise from consciousness. And so just like we can take matter, or the physicists can examine matter and they can show us that it's not as solid, it's not as absolute as we thought it was. And there's this infinite sea of energy that all things are arising from. That's at the smallest quantum level, we could say. Just like we can go that route, we can also go the same route through meditation. And we can start in meditation with this perception, with this belief, with this identification as being an ego, as being a separate self, as being a body-mind. But as we start to meditate, as we start to transcend, which the word transcend just means to go beyond, as we go beyond this sense of being a separate self, as we go beyond the ego, which is stuck in space and time, we start to enter into our heart space. And then through the heart space, we enter into the kingdom of heaven, or the Tao, or reality, or pure consciousness, whatever you want to call it. We start to enter into this space where the veil is removed, the illusion of separation starts to dissipate, and we start to see what actually is. We experience pure isness. And in this experience, like I said, this sense of being a separate egoic self, it becomes very apparent that this separate egoic self, this identity, this belief, is simply a mental construct. And it starts to fall away when the illusion of separation starts to fall away. And we see that we are one with everything. Whatever we are is not separate. It's inherently, intrinsically interconnected with all things, with everything, okay? And so that is what happens in meditation. And so that experience of being one with everything, I believe, is the same realization, the same discovery of this infinite sea of energy that's holding all things together, we could say, or from which all the forces and matter of the universe are arising from. It's all arising from pure consciousness, pure awareness, which cannot be located. It can't be pinpointed. You can't say it's this, but it's not that. No, because it's beyond it all. It's beyond time and space. It's infinite and it's eternal. And so try that out in meditation. Try to locate, try to point at the witness, try to point at the subject, the observer. You can't do it. You simply cannot do it. St. Francis of Assisi said, what we are looking for is what is looking. So again, it's just something that you can try to do it. As a matter of fact, it's actually good to try, just to convince yourself, just to prove to yourself that this fundamental essence of being, that's just awareness, is truly infinite. It's beyond the confines of space, and it can't be pinpointed. It can't be located. And so just, again, try to experiment with that. And while you're investigating the essence of your nature, try to directly point at the witness. Anyways, moving on. So we go from realizing that the essence of our true being is beyond space, but then we realize that we're also, the essence of the true self is also beyond time. And so it's eternal. It's not just infinite, it's eternal. Well, how do we know this? Well, we start with the I am presence. The I am presence is what reveals that the essence of our nature is timeless. And so when I say the true self is eternal, when I use that word eternal, I don't mean a time that starts, that goes on forever and ever and ever. I mean beyond time. I mean no time. I mean timelessness. And so when you start with the I am, when you meditate on the I am, what you realize is that everything that you've been able to experience as the subject is moving. It's changing. It's not constant. But what is constant, what has always been the same, is the essence or the presence of I am. And so as far back as you can remember, you've always had this awareness, this presence, this essence of I am-ness. So you can go back 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, or 50 years ago. It doesn't matter. As far back as you can remember, this I am awareness, the I am-ness, has been your experience. And there was never a time where the I am was, non-existent. Because if there is no essence, if there is no I am-ness, then there is no you. The I am is fundamentally the essence of what you are, who you are. And so again, as far back as you can remember, just go through that and try to sit with that. Try to think about that for a moment. If I were talking to you 10 years ago, let's just say, and we were to have the same conversation, and if I would have said, do you have the presence, do you have the awareness of I am? You would have said, yes. In that moment, if I would have asked you that question, you would have said, absolutely. I have this, whatever you want to call it, feeling, sensation, presence of I am. I exist. Now, that same presence that you had 10 years ago is the same presence that you have right now. You have the I am essence, the I am presence, the I am awareness right now. As you're watching me, as you're listening to me talk right now, it's the same. It has not changed. Everything that you've been observing, change has occurred in what's being observed. So obviously you have different thoughts, different feelings, different emotions than what you had 10 years ago or 20 years ago or 30 years ago or 50 years ago. The body has changed. The mind has changed. Your circumstances, situations around you have changed, but what has not changed is this fundamental essence of I am-ness. Why? Because it's beyond time. It's not confined to time and space. It doesn't know this linear function of past, present, future. It's timeless. And that's why Jesus says, before Abraham was, I am. Before your parents were born, I am. I am is beyond time. And so, as far back as you can remember, you've had this presence, you've had this awareness. But the ego wants us to think that the I am has a beginning and it has an end, but it does not have a beginning or an end because it's eternal. It doesn't come into being and then it doesn't, have a start date and then it exists for however long and then it just disappears. No, the I am always is, and you have that. That's not something that you can it's not something that is out in your future that you can attain or achieve or earn. No, you can experience it. You can sit back and rest in the I am presence right here, right now, in the present moment, in the eternal now, because the eternal now is all that exists. This is it. And you can fully be absorbed in that. Through meditation, you can rest in your I am-ness, which always is and always will be. And so the I am presence that you have was in existence before you were born, before your body was born, before the particular incarnation that you're experiencing came into existence. And the I am that you're experiencing, the I am that you are, was in existence not just before you were born, but before your parents were born. And again, Jesus says, before Abraham was, I am. It knows no time. It knows no beginning. It knows no end. It knows no birth. It knows no death. It is eternal. It just is. And although the memory of what we have in the finite mind doesn't really support this, because for most of us, we can only remember what we've experienced in this particular lifetime, in this particular incarnation, although there are people who can remember past lives and things like that. So the memory, the finite mind that we are experiencing, that we have in this particular body mind, in this particular incarnation, although it doesn't support the I am presence, it doesn't matter, because you can fall back, you can sit in the I am presence, in the eternal now, right here, through meditation, and you can transcend the mind. And then you realize that who you are fundamentally is beyond the mind and beyond the body and beyond thoughts and feelings and emotions and all of it. You are pure awareness. But again, we go beyond time and space. We start to know ourselves as pure awareness. And this is something that, throughout the various spiritual traditions, they talk about knowing thyself, know who you really are. That's the know thyself is Greek philosophy, right? Ancient Greek philosophy. And then we find it in the Eastern traditions, this emphasis, this importance of self-discovery, self-realization, waking up to who you really are, because when you wake up to who you really are, then that is what awakening is all about. That is what life is all about. That's what the game is all about. Knowing yourself. And this is something that, throughout the Gospel of Thomas, I find it's really fascinating, but this is essentially the whole theme of the Gospel of Thomas. Jesus is wanting his disciples to wake up, to realize who they really are. And we find this all throughout the 114 sayings of this book. And so with that in mind, with that being the general theme of the book, in the very beginning of the book, in saying number 2, Jesus says something like, whoever seeks shouldn't stop until they find. And when they find, they will be troubled. But he doesn't end with that. He says, after being troubled for some time, they'll be amazed and then astonished, and then they'll reign over the all, okay? And so what is Jesus actually saying? Well, I think Jesus is actually walking his disciples through that process of nete, letting go of who we think we are, so that we can then discover who we really are. And that process of nete, when you start to let go of the ego and all these different attachments and labels and who you thought you were, that can be very challenging. That can be troubling. And so this truth will trouble you, absolutely. When you first start to taste this, when you first start to go through that, the process of nete, and you realize that the egoic programming and the egoic conditioning is not true. It was something that was given to you. It was something that you believed, and it became ingrained in your subconscious mind, and you were living your entire life according to the subconscious programming. When you start to let go of all these different things, these beliefs and these attachments and all the conditioning, it can be challenging. And this is why, for many people, they've considered the time between letting go of who you think you are and discovering who you really are is the dark night of the soul. That's what they've referred to as the dark night of the soul. It's you're in this place of, okay, I'm letting go, and now I know who I'm not, but who am I really? And so it's that time in between. That is what I believe. I think that's really what the dark night of the soul really is. And so waking up is you are at a place where you start to see. The veil is removed and you start to see who you really are. And this is where the amazement comes in that Jesus talks about in saying number 2. This is when you're astonished. This is when you're marveled. And then Jesus says that you will reign over the all. Now, what does this mean? Well, I think this is another way of referring to unity consciousness, oneness with everything. So, again, we go from nothing, no thing, to everything. Nothing and everything merges, and this is where we get unity consciousness, oneness with everything. We realize that this awareness that we are fundamentally is not separate. It's the ground of being from which all things, all matter, all forces of the universe are arising, and they'll return to this infinite sea of awareness. In this infinite sea of awareness, call it God, call it source consciousness, call it the Tao, call it whatever you want, is fundamentally who you are. You are an expression, you are a manifestation of the one. The one divided itself up into the many simply for knowing itself more intimately. And that's what this whole game of life is. That's what the whole spiritual evolution is all about. It's the one knowing itself infinitely and in many different ways. And so that's what's going on here. And so when we start to step into unity consciousness, the awareness that there is no separation and that we are one with everything and everyone, and that the I am presence that I have is the same I am presence that everyone else around me has, and that everything has, every being has, and that there's only one I am, there's only one consciousness, there's only one consciousness, there's only one awareness, there's only one spirit, like it even says in the Bible. When we see this, this is the beginning of unity consciousness. And so, with unity consciousness, with this awareness of oneness, I think a good analogy to really understand this is looking at the ocean. And so with the ocean, there's all these different waves that are arising from the ocean. And so we could say that we are, each one of us, are unique waves of the ocean. And so with these waves, there is no separation. The waves are something that the ocean is doing, right? And so in the same way, what we are, this expression of the one, this expression of the divine, is like a wave of the ocean or like a branch of the tree. There is no separation, and essentially the branch is the tree. The wave is the ocean. The wave is something that the ocean is doing, as Alan Watts would say. And so that's just, I think, a good way to kind of understand it. And so, yeah, this is unity consciousness. We go from having this feeling of loneliness, the witness is dry, it feels disconnected, but then there's a shift where we start to wake up to the truth of this awareness and how really infinite and timeless it is. And then all things come together. All things are seen as one. And like I said, the I am presence that you have is the I am presence of all. And that is what reigning over the all is. It's not like this hierarchy thing. It's unity consciousness. It's realizing that the all is all that there is. Everything is one. And to see that is, I think, what Jesus is actually talking about here. And as we go through, the rest of this book, we see so many different sayings where Jesus is pointing out, or he's referring to the unborn, the undying, the essence of us that is beyond birth and death. Because again, this is the theme of this book, and this is why Jesus wants his disciples to know who they really are. And he says, I think it's saying 3 somewhere, he says, when you know yourselves, then you will be known, and you will realize that you are children of God, or something like that. And so this is what it's all about. It's all about waking up, is all about recognizing, discovering who you really are. And this can be a journey. This can be a process that takes a lifetime or even lifetimes, until we'll keep experiencing lifetimes and different incarnations until we come to see and until we come to fully know who we really are. That's what this game is all about. It's self-discovery. It's letting go of everything that we've built up to be who we thought we were, and then allowing it to be almost like our vehicle. The ego can be the vehicle for awakening, because in order to transcend the ego, we have to develop an ego. And so that's part of the game too, and that's included. And that's another thing. Once we start to wake up, once we start to discover who we really are, the game turns into, as Ken Wilber would say, as transcend and include. So we don't transcend and exclude. Everything is included. Why? Because it's unity consciousness. And so in the beginning phases of self-discovery, nete, we would say, I'm not my body, I'm not my mind. Right, like you are not your body in the sense of you are not just your body. You are not just this separate egoic body-mind. No. When you go past that and you step into unity consciousness and nothing and everything merge into this pure awareness, we could say, then you realize that I am not just my body, but the body is included. I'm not just my mind, but the mind is included, because everything is included, because all is one. So that's the shift that is happening, and that's where the amazement comes in that Jesus talks about. That's when the bliss, that's when the pure joy and love and enlightenment is fully experienced. And again, enlightenment is not something to be attained. It's something that we already have, because enlightenment is the essence of our being. And that is what this process, that is what this journey is essentially all about. Waking up to what is right here, right now, in the present moment. Pure isness. And the way to discover the true self is by starting with who we are not. But once we move past that, once we go through the dark night of the soul, and we let go of who we think we are, we start to discover who we really are. And who we really are, the true self, is beyond birth and death. The body has a birth date, it lives for however long, and then it dies. But you do not die, because you are eternal. You are infinite, and you are divine. So, if you found this video helpful, informative, or insightful, please leave a thumbs up at the bottom of the screen, and be sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.